Hello. We are going to be starting our nature journals. And this is one of my favorite books on the subject. So if you are interested in getting a copy of this for yourself, it is called Keeping a Nature Journal. Discover a Whole New Way of Seeing the World Around You by Claire Walker Leslie and Charles E. Roth. So I would highly recommend getting a copy of this if you and your family are interested in nature journaling. Now, we today are just going to focus a little bit on what we're starting with and why. So, there are lots of ways that people have kept logbooks in the past, and many people keep nature journals of varying kinds still today. So you'll see I have lots and lots of pages and things marked in this book. It's a really great book, but I'm not going to share them all with you today. The first thing that I want to talk about is a little bit of what exactly is nature journaling. Nature journaling is not new. In fact, it is one of the oldest methods around. People have been using it throughout history to record a hunt or battle, the passage of time, the success of an exploration, the sickness in a village, whether they drew on cave walls, etched marks into sticks, painted stories on vases or teepees, or laboriously inscribed sheepskin manuscripts. Nature journals have been kept. These records may not have been called nature journals at the time, but nature journals they truly were. Sea captains have kept logs, which are a form of nature journal, noting the weather, constellations, passing birds, human behavior, and other items of interest. How do you think Christopher Columbus convinced Queen Isabella that he had reached the New World? Did he send her an email? Did he fax her the information? Did he even have a camera? He had his logbook. Many explorers then and still today use artist naturalists on their expeditions. Why do you think they take such people along? Why do you think President Jefferson hired explorers Lewis and Clark to lead the expedition on the Missouri River to the Pacific Ocean? Yes, they were skilled exploration leaders, but each also kept meticulous journals containing detailed drawings and writings. Their journals contain some of the best records we have today of their hazardous 2-year journey. In both Europe and America, school children often made yearly journals of their class observations about nature and human life in the village or out on the prairie as a way of learning about where they lived. These journals also served as basal readers. Students of the next generation became recipients of the knowledge of place gained by earlier generation. Today, many schools, nature centers, and college environmental studies programs are returning to the studies of local backyard habitats, partly in reaction to a previous flood of classroom studies dealing with exotic and far-off habitats, such as the Arctic, rainforest, desert, or ocean. We, however, are going to focus on the place where we live, here in the area around and in Helena, Montana. You don't have to travel to some far-off place in order to enjoy nature. You simply have to go outside and observe. So we are going to start our nature journals. There are lots of ways that professionals do this. For example, many of them have studied art professionally. I really like this picture where we've got a couple trees showing the changing colors. However, you don't have to be a professional in order to do a nice job. So you can start with your starting cover page. And here you can see an example where they did a nice drawing border. And in this case, they put a little poem at the front talking about what kinds of things they're going to write about. Now, when you begin in your journal, you are going to just start with the very basics. So you are going to want to have some kind of container with pencils. You don't have to bring colored pencils or paints or anything fancy, but you can if you want. You will, however, need to bring with you pen or pencil, and if you bring a pencil, bring an eraser, and probably some kind of backpack or something if you're going on a hike. If you're just going to be near your home, you don't need anything more than just to head outside with something to write with and your nature journal. Now, when you are keeping track, you can have some mixture of drawing and of words. And in many cases, the types of words and things that you use are going to be very simple. Some people, on the other hand, like to write and write and write. There's no wrong way to do a nature journal. So here's an example from a student. Sam Austin, October 5th, Brown Elementary School, Reading, Massachusetts, 9:30 a.m. Cloudy, cool, a little wind, around 55 degrees. Waxing moon, sunrise 6:40 a.m., sunset 4:38 p.m. I think he got this part out of the newspaper. I doubt this kid just happens to know that off the top of his head. You can also use your phone to find that information. Leaves turning color, fall flowers. Insects, crickets, flies, ants. Birds, squirrels. Fall seeds, nuts, fruits. I hear leaves, wind, bird, people's feet, car. And then we had a couple doodles down here to kind of remember some of that information. So when you are beginning, you just have to include the basic information. Your name, the date, the place, the time. Usually people include a description of the weather and their first impressions. It's nice to keep track of the wind direction, any fun cloud patterns or anything going on in the sky. And then you can begin doing your ground observations. What's going on the ground around you? Sometimes it's really fun to change your level. So maybe lay down on your belly and look around. Sometimes getting a worm's eye view of things gives you a completely different perspective. So many people will give you advice on how to draw and all of the good art lessons. But really what I want you to do is to first learn to focus. Before you can even move outdoors, you can get yourself in the mood to observe, reflect, and record with some simple activities. So try a couple of these. Focus for a few minutes, either privately or in discussion with others, on what it means to observe nature. Think about what you want to achieve with your nature journaling and how it may relate to other personal goals you have. You can also think of the nature journal as a treasure hunt. Ask yourself, what's out there beyond the doorstep? What treasures will I find? You will be amazed when you actually get outside at all the things there are to draw and write about. Remind yourself that you are keeping the journal to learn to observe, record, and fully appreciate. This is not just an art exercise, and it is certainly not any kind of a test. You are doing this for yourself and your own enjoyment. I am going to have us go through some art lessons and things like that as we get going in the year, but primarily this is an observing activity where you learn how to quiet yourself, you learn how to listen, you learn how to observe in detail. And so I'm not going to focus on the art quite yet. What I would like to begin with is an autumn journal. So here is an example from the artist where she was at a park, and you can see this lovely drawing showing the plants and the animals and the changing colors. There's a lot of color in this entry because there's a lot of color in fall. So that is often one of the things that people will look at in the autumn. So as you are looking, I want you to really especially pay attention to the changes. You are going to be looking for signs of fall. So here are some signs of fall that you might be looking for. In plants, what plants still have flowers? What have seeds? Find different grass, rush, and sedge seed heads and draw them. Draw 5 different leaves from plants and contrast their shapes. What plants have leaves turning color? Draw and identify 5 wildflowers near you. Were they ever used in cooking, for medicine, or to dye wool? Roger Tory Peterson's A Field Guide to Wildflowers is a good resource to have. So that's how you might be inspired to inspect the plants in more detail. Trees. What trees turn color? Draw 5 different leaves with different colors and shapes. Do trees of the same kind all have the same colors? Do different kinds of trees each have their own fall color change? Read about fall foliage changes. Identify and draw seeds, fruits, nuts of different trees and shrubs. Draw the differences between evergreen and deciduous trees. Draw 5 tree shapes near you and identify the trees, which are native to your area and which have been imported. So that's a suggestion on how you could focus in on the trees. Animals. Read about and draw the 8 most common animals you think live nearby you. Rabbits, squirrels, foxes, frogs, fish, butterflies, ants, turtles, and so on. Definitely in Helena, you can usually see deer all year round. Draw from life if possible. If not, use photographs or a trip to the local library. Don't forget small creatures, insects, bugs, and snails, and see how they might be preparing for winter. So that is if you would like to focus on animals. Birds is another one. What birds live near you? What birds will migrate? What birds will stay nearby all winter? Draw from life if possible. See if you can find local birds such as the crow, pigeon, magpie, or any of the other birds that live in our area. You can also focus on the weather and season. Which phases of the moon do you see and when? That's a really good one if you're going to be looking in the evening. Draw cloud patterns and note sky color. Learn the cloud types and what kind of weather each indicates. Keep a daily weather and temperature chart so you can begin to predict weather in your area. What does the fall mean to you? What are the festivals of fall? How does our American Thanksgiving in late November relate to the fall harvests of other cultures? So that's an area where you could maybe focus on weather and season. That is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ideas for an autumn journal. I'm going to bet that you got inspired by at least one of those ideas. Now, once you are starting your journal, again, you're going to focus on doing some illustrations and doing some descriptions. This is an example showing drawing deciduous trees and the different kinds of trees with leaves. This one over here is an example where they are looking at the phases of the moon, and specifically in this case, they're looking at a total eclipse of the moon from Garfield Street. So watching the eclipse of the moon, you can see they wrote down the time and they showed how it was in a little bit different location, and they showed the color and the time of each part of their observations. Now, it is really fun to watch a full lunar eclipse. I will agree on that. Here's an example of observing shapes and color, especially looking at the changes in colors of leaves and looking at the shapes of leaves. There are a lot of different kinds of shapes of leaves out there. You might get excited about and just want to entirely focus on leaves. That is also an option. So whether you are making observations about fun things that happen in fall, or whether you are really working on drawing a specific part of the area near your home, it's a really good activity for you to enjoy going outside. So no screens, take some time, go outside and see what you can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. You can often taste the winter change coming on the air. So I don't mind what format you use for your nature journal. What I am looking for is that you are observing and that you are putting thought and effort into your observations. I cannot wait to see your nature journals and for you to share some photos with me of what you have observed.